So I love this rotation. We'll start there. So this is going to be our 4th year of running a final year resiliency rotation for our students. Okay, that was not the right button. I'm actually not going to talk to you about the background because I think we all know why we created the rotation, but I will talk to you about our goals, the structure of the rotation, learning objectives, and then what we did. Not news to anybody, right? We know we're having a hard time in our profession. So in our rotation, we're a little bit behind in Canada, I'm not going to lie. So it wasn't news to us sort of 4 or 5 years ago that our profession was struggling, but we did feel more pressed to do something about it. So our hope at that time was that we could, before our students left what I call the nest, that we could give them some tools so that they could thrive, not just survive. We wanted to ease the transition, knowing that transitional times are really difficult, and also knowing that the students hold this belief that it's going to be better. After graduation, life's going to be really great. And then it's not. And also knowing that first year out, there are so many challenges. And so that hype, that like, it's going to be really great. And then that crash is really hard. So we felt that, and frankly, the structure of our curriculum meant that we could add a final year rotation without a lot of fuss. So we built a final year rotation, the goals, the learning objectives, and our course curriculum that we tell our students and we hold ourselves to were that they were going to learn about the current state of mental wellness and resilience in the profession, to investigate and practice several wellness and resilience strategies, supporting their self-management and team functioning skills. We threw money in there as well, so to devise a personal finance management plan for after graduation, and then sort of overall to create a resilience plan to help them manage the non-technical challenges of their veterinary careers, including practice. We did want to at least have a nod to the fact that not everyone might go into practice, which is why all veterinary careers, the full title of the rotation, I think, is Resilience for Veterinary Careers, not just clinical practice. So what we did, our veterinary school in Canada is a little bit different than in the UK, so you have to do at least 2 years of undergraduate education first, so it's not direct entry out of high school, just so you know. Often students start after their 3rd or 4th year of undergrad, so we have a slightly more, I'll say mature, and I just mean age-wise, not maturity-wise, level. So by the time then they have 4 years of veterinary school, or 4th year of veterinary school is a clinical year. They spend it mostly in our teaching hospital, but they do external rotations as well. So they are allowed to have elective rotations, some of which are in the hospital, some of which aren't. This was an elective 1-week rotation, 5 days, no more than 8 to 5 ever. So this, for our students, looks like a bit of a holiday often, certainly compared to some of their small animal surgery and medicine rotations. We set the groups sort of no less than 5. I think our first year we did have one group of 4. We've had it as big as 10, but 8 is closer to where things are happy. And in the structure of our school year, the students choose their stream. So they can choose small animal, like they can stream in 4th year, so they can have a rural practice focus, a food animal focus, equine, small, I think that's it. They choose their stream, they initially choose their rotations in 3rd year, but they can change the rotations as 4th year goes on. So we built the rotation sort of on 2 different pillars of ideas. The first is of 8 wellness dimensions. Some people like to think that there are 7. Some people like to think that there are 9. We like to say that there are 8. One thing that it's really important for me to point out is the word spiritual is up on the slide, and I'm not sure what perhaps the automatic translation of that is for the people in this room. For the students, it normally very quickly translates to religion, and that's not the way we define it at all in the rotation. We work with a definition much closer to meaning and purpose in life, and so on. So if you're looking at that, wondering if there was any religion in the rotation, no, there was not. But The rest of those wellness domains encompass relationships with others, self-care. Intellectual wellness includes creativity. That's often the ninth one that's referenced by some other people. They'll add creativity as a wellness domain, but I put it under intellectual. Environmental, really importantly, is not only physical space, but also social space. So the culture of our practice, sort of when we talk about toxicity in a practice or in a space, that lives in environmental as well. Financial, occupational. Occupational is obviously a focus of our rotation, and it was a space where we were better able to feel safe with our students. I'm a veterinarian, and I'm an epidemiologist, not a social worker, not a psychologist. And so when we talked, we would often use examples from the veterinary profession because that was safer for our students than really digging into their personal lives, which is not something that we felt either belonged in a veterinary curriculum or we were qualified to do. The other pillar that we based our rotation on was emotional intelligence. There are a number of different ways to conceptualize emotional intelligence. I really like this picture, A, because there's a brain in the middle, and I'm a little nerdy that way, but also because it has the word motivation on it. You may have seen this, sort of this four square, we have self on one side, social on the other, and awareness and management as an idea of emotional intelligence, and I like this one too. But the students really resonated when we talked about motivation. When they looked at this, they were sort of this like, ugh, and I was like, yeah, motivation, it's hard, especially when we're talking about changing patterns, changing behaviors, building habits. So that was something that they really resonated with. And I think I sort of came to overtly stating emotional intelligence as a part of the rotation in its second year because we started with wellness domains and that was great, but really building that self-awareness and self-management was what we were doing, and we need that to know what's happening and to be able to work through some of the other wellness domain pieces. It was really important to us that we made it experiential learning, and that's because sitting listening to wellness lectures isn't all that great. It's boring. We didn't want to just send them back to the classroom. We wanted small group. We wanted interactive where they'd be able to talk and everyone could sort of have a synergistic experience where they could interact with the material, know what was going to work for them, and take it away. So that meant that all of our sessions were interactive. We asked the students to journal every night. They were given reflection questions that matched up with each of their sessions. Those journaling questions were for them only, so I can't tell you if they did it. I can tell you they were asked to do it. You may be wondering about the value of asking students to do something on their own time that I'm never going to see, but something that I think is incredibly valuable to the success of the rotation. I didn't think that it would be valuable for them to write something for me. I didn't want them to. I decided that it was a better risk to ask them to do it and for them not to do it than it was for them to just write what they thought I wanted to hear and give them a make work assignment, because no one likes those, including me. We knew that in our 1 week, in our 5 days, that we weren't going to be able to dig deep into very much, or if we did, it was going to be because we sacrificed a lot of other things. So I viewed it as a buffet, and I introduced the meals like any good restaurateur would, and they took from it what was relevant and important to them at that stage in their life. They did have an assignment following the rotation, and they weren't allowed to start it until the rotation was done. So the rotation finished on a Friday. They got their assignment on the Friday, and they were asked to choose a wellness goal. And I encouraged them to set the lowest bar that they could, knowing that all veterinary students are type A superachievers. And so they were to set a wellness goal, try to achieve it in the 2 weeks they had following the rotation, and then they did submit that assignment to me. There were reflection questions asked, and I graded it, completion marks, for them to get their final evaluation for the rotation. If they had a really demanding rotation following, we did adjust the deadline because the purpose of the rotation was not to make more stress, but to encourage them to take something, anything that they learned, and start applying it to their life. Also knowing that choosing one goal and devoting your energy to one goal leads to better success than choosing 4. and then not succeeding and feeling discouraged. So it was actually quite difficult for some of the students to only choose one and to set sort of a we say SMART goals. If I say SMART goals, we're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. There we go. Thank you for all of you that helped me. So that was really important for that. Me alone for 5 days, while I'm peppy and enthusiastic, would get a little old. So we used our on-campus resources at the Ontario Vet College. The vet school is actually on the other side of a busy road. So we say we use people from the other side of the road. Not that we have division issues at all. So most of these people were brand new to our vet students. So we used people from student life, our multi-faith team. Again, not because they came to talk about religion, but because our multi-faith team had really strong facilitators when it came to discussions of values and of meaning and purpose. We have an in-house counselor at our school. He came for some of the sessions, although he no longer came for the first year or two, but doesn't attend anymore. Athletics, and then we had veterinarians from our community. So now the fun part. No, yes. Okay, I'm going to tell you what we did. So on Monday, we started out with an introductory lecture, which gave them some stats. So if they were thinking, oh, it's not me, or it's not going to be me, we had that like, hey, this might be you. We also introduced some basic concepts of challenge by choice, all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking. We did some sort of basic cognitive biases, be aware of those things. Then they did a team code or a group contract. It was a craft project. And that was really so that they'd set some group norms and create safety amongst themselves as a group. It also really got them out of their vet school mindset. I have a craft box, there's some fake flowers and markers and glitter glue, and other fun things. So we really tried to start out the week in quite a fun way. I should also mention, because if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget, we held this rotation on the other side of the road, actually in our athletics building, somewhere that a lot of the veterinary students don't frequent, but it was really important for us as organizers and also for the students that we took them physically out of the building. And a lot of the students commented on how important that was and how liberating and freeing it was from all of the baggage that lived for them at vet school to be in another place, especially when talking about something pretty novel. So all of the quotes, the first year we did the rotation, I had the students give feedback on each of the sessions at the end of the week, and they knew that that was never ever going to be held against them, but to ensure that we had designed something that was important and relevant. So these are just comments that the students have said. We then used the Strengths Finder, the Gallup Strengths Finder assessment, which they did in advance, and we had student life. So again, building some self-awareness by doing an assessment that talks about their unique strengths. And also it's really fun, build self-awareness, and it helped build forward into our values conversation, which we had next. It was, again, we were really trying to help students start to feel grounded in what they're good at, who they are, knowing that those are important pillars for wellness and resilience. So that was the end of Monday. We started Tuesday out with, I called it a more occupational wellness morning, but really following from values. We then talked about boundaries. For our second 2 years, we had a veterinarian who's gone on to become a psychotherapist come back in and run this session. And that's our one of 3 sort of sessions where we had veterinarians from the community come. And it was amazing how meaningful that was to the students in sort of seeing that, A, you can always carry on from your vet career, but also really having a lot of relevance to where they are right now. Our vet students often have a little bit of old boys club or, well, that's other, they don't understand me. I really need people who understand me. And so it was important that I was there facilitating all of the time with our session specific facilitators who had been really well primed about vet students if they hadn't known about vet students before. But they really loved Liz who came. We then had a self-compassion and forgiveness session. And this one is, as you might imagine, really hard, but it's really important. We then had case discussion and application. So we took the values session, the boundary session, and self-compassion session, and then we sort of had almost like case-based learning. So I tried initially to give them a veterinary example to work through for this, and that was just a mistake. What I did do in the end that worked really well was give them an example from my teaching life of when I made a mistake. We guessed my values, we looked at what boundaries of mine had been violated or I should have held or I could have put in place to save me from making the mistake that I did. And then we talked about how I could be kind to myself following that. And that was really effective. When we had veterinary examples, we really went down the rabbit hole of entrenched thoughts and behavior patterns about welfare, euthanasia. Like it did not work well, but taking them out of that did allow them to apply those concepts, and that was a really interesting learning for me as a facilitator and hopefully for you. We then had yoga on Tuesday afternoon with, again, a veterinarian who's a yoga teacher, and we had a nutrition session. We made smoothies in our nutrition session, which are delicious. We all got to learn about chia seeds. It was really important to me to have a light afternoon following our heavy morning, and you'll notice that through the week we tried to balance the days so that they weren't super heavy and never ever wanting to leave the students at the end of the day in a really vulnerable spot, always trying to have a recovery activity. Wednesday, we started the morning with a discussion of meaning and purpose. This is probably one of the hardest sessions to get right, and we've had a number of different facilitators come in and give it, and I think it's hard to get right because the students really haven't ever thought about it before. And they often say, I don't need that. So that's tricky. We know that they do need it. Then we had a personal finance session, which we are all glad that I did not lead, but we had someone from the community, a certified financial planner, come. And we spent Wednesday afternoon doing leadership activities. So group activities where they had to work as a team. We then debriefed those. They did an escape room, which 4 years ago they thought was really cool, and now they critique the escape room. Also, the first year I got to take them on a field trip. I got to rent a car and drive them downtown, which was really, really fun. We now have one on campus. Shocking. So no field trip, but hey. Thursday morning we did mind-body techniques. So we now spend about 2.5 hours doing this. We bought them M-Waves, which are little biofeedback devices. They give you an educational discount if you buy a bunch. I think I bought 9. But it was really amazing for the students to be able to see their breathing. I hated any form of breathing because I thought I couldn't do it right. I used to coach rowing, and I made my students all do like mind training and breathing, and I was just like, yeah, and I can't do it. The hypocrisy, noteworthy. But they really appreciated, we did biofeedback using skin temperature and using the M-Waves, and that was really meaningful. We even had one student comment about how she used her breathing techniques on her Navli, which was really fun. Then I took them rock climbing, and we had a session on mental health literacy and first aid. Then we had a time management session, and I'm sad that I wrote time management because we now call it energy budgeting. Which is far more appropriate. So energy budgeting for me is where the rubber meets the road on what we're doing with our values and our boundaries and our self-compassion. How are we prioritizing our life in accordance with those things? Friday morning started out with a discussion about self-care, explicitly about self-care. So they filled out a little bullseye. This is often where they told me that they didn't care about spiritual or meaning and purpose at all. And then we would have a big brainstorming session on a piece of flip chart paper about all of the self-care activities that they engage in. And again, that was another one that was pretty illuminating for students. It was really important to me that they recognize that what they're doing is not just all negative. They're not doing nothing all of the time. I think, well, I don't do anything for self-care. Well, we can rebrand almost anything into self-care. I know I'm running late. But being intentional about it is important. Then it's not my fault if the computer won't change the slide. So then we had community vets. We had community vets come in. We had a 2-hour conversation with them. I invited colleagues that I knew were going to be student friendly and open about their experiences and their challenges, their mental health challenges. And we just talked to them for 2 hours. It was completely student led, and the students loved it, loved it, loved it. They then went on a reflective walk after lunch. We had a really nasty polar vortex and it was -30. That was difficult. But it was really important to me that they have some quiet time during the week before they were dismissed. One student wanted me to do it at the end of the day. I said no. And then they wrote a letter to themselves and we had some final feedback. The students have wonderful things to say about our rotation. I will say that we're trying really hard to evaluate the efficacy of our outcome using good scientific principles. The students really don't like doing our surveys. So I don't have great data other than this, and we're working on redesigning something that they will do before and after for a number of years, because once they graduate, they become very hard to get a hold of. So I'm sorry, and I'm happy to answer 1 or 2 questions before my time is desperately up, because I'm really late.